Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's call the meeting to order. The first meeting we've got today is the Open General Purposes Committee meeting. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor, opposed, carried. So we have one delegation, which is with Donald Trapp, Executive Project Director, etc., on the George Massey Crossing program. So if we could turn it over to the delegation. Now, as I understand it, there are a number of people with Mr. Trapp. So anyway, you can introduce yourselves, please.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. My name is Darcy Vermeulen. I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement at the George Massey Crossing project with the Transportation Investment Corporation. I'm dialing in today from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and I'm joined by a few of my colleagues. Donald Trapp, as you mentioned, is our Executive Project Director, but also joining me here today to present and discuss with you is the Project Director for the Steveson Interchange project, that's Lauren Mateus, as well as our environmental lead, Darcy Pezlowski. We're really thrilled to have this time with you today, and we appreciate you making us the priority on your agenda and looking forward to a discussion. With that, I will turn it over to Donald. Hopefully everyone is now seeing our presentation. Please let me know, Your Worship, the screen share is not functioning properly, but if it is, I'll turn it over to Donald and we'll get underway.
Yeah, we're only seeing half of the presentation. What can we do about that?
Let us try that one more time here. It was working just before, of course.
Of course. Okay, there we go. We got it now.
Perfect, thank you. And I will turn it over to Donald.
Thank you, Darcy. Am I coming through fine?
Yes.
Great. Your Worship, councillors and staff, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us to be here today to speak about the George Massey Crossing Program. My name is Donald Trapp, and I'm the Project Director for the Crossing Program. I'm speaking on behalf of Transportation Investment Corporation, who will be delivering this project on behalf of the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure. I'd like to begin by acknowledging I'm joining you today from the traditional territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I would also like to acknowledge the cooperation of city staff who have been supporting and helping advance the corridor projects and most recently have provided initial feedback to the Crossing Project team on our upcoming environmental assessment process when we last met on September 23rd. The first purpose of today's presentation is to provide an update on both the Highway 99 corridor improvements and the crossing, including an overview of the environmental assessment process for the crossing. Next slide, please. The George Massey program consists of the Immersed Tube Tunnel Crossing project and a series of immediate improvements to the Highway 99 corridor, including the Steveson Interchange project and 3 transit and cycling advanced works projects. The crossing and the Steveson projects are being delivered by TI Corp, while the transit and cycling works are being delivered by the Ministry. Transportation Investment Corporation, or TI Corp, is a Crown corporation that has been mandated by the province to deliver major projects on behalf of the Ministry and to develop capacity for major project delivery in the public sector. We are assigned approved projects through a formal agreement with the Ministry. The scope, schedule, and budget of these projects are approved through the business case process, and TI Corp is mandated to deliver within this specific approval. Following delivery, the Ministry operates and maintains the asset. It is important to note that studies and planning for future improvements that are outside of the scope of the approved George Massey Crossing program are managed by the Ministry's South Coast Region Highways Department. The Ministry's involvement in Transport 2050 is an example of the planning work being led by the region as outside of the scope of TI Corp's mandate. At this time, I will give an overview of the crossing project and then turn the presentation over to Lauren to provide an update on the Steveson project. As you are aware, the province has determined that the existing George Massey Tunnel will be replaced with a new 8-lane immersed tube tunnel. This is the same technology choice as the current crossing and also the crossing technology endorsed by the Metro Vancouver Board as a right project for the region. The new crossing will be designed to address current challenges and accommodate planned population and economic growth in a manner that benefits all modes of transportation. The new tunnel will be built to modern design standards and include a 5-meter wide multi-use path to provide an active transportation connection across the Fraser River west of the Alex Fraser Bridge. I would like to note that the multi-use path will be located within its own tube, separated from traffic, and have its own ventilation system. The new tunnel will have an 8-lane cross-section with outside lanes being reserved for transit vehicles. The dedicated transit lanes and fully separated active transportation pathways are an exciting addition that will give our community safe and convenient alternatives to traveling by car. The total project budget is $4.15 billion, inclusive of design and construction, owner's costs, and contingencies. The new tunnel will be in operation in 2030. Next slide, please. You can see from the attached graphic that the scope of work related to the crossing project will extend from Westminster Highway in the city of Richmond to Highway 17 Interchange in the city of Delta. The blue line on the left side of the image indicates where a new southbound transit bus on shoulder lane will be constructed from Westminster Highway south to the new tunnel. The gray line on each side of the river indicates the construction of new north and south approaches or portals to the tunnel, including widening of the highway to accommodate the new 8-lane crossing. The two small red lines on the City of Richmond side indicate the replacement of the CN Railway Bridge and the Rice Mill Road overpass with new longer structures that will span the increased portal width. I would like to point out that the approved scope does not include on or off ramps to Highway 99 at Rice Mill Road. The red line between Dees Island and the City of Delta indicates the upgrade and replacement of the existing Dees Slough Bridge. The new bridge will have an 8-lane cross-section to tie into the new tunnel. Finally, the yellow line indicates where the new immersed tube tunnel will be located. The new tunnel will be located approximately 40 meters upstream from the existing tunnel alignment. I should note that it's expected the existing tunnel will remain operational during construction of the new tunnel. Next slide, please. This is my last slide on the scope of the crossing, and we would just like to notice some key additional works associated with the project. Following construction of the new crossing, the existing tunnel will be removed, including all 6 of its tunnel elements. Removal is recommended to address potential risks to the new crossing and the dike system that could materialize following a strong seismic event. Tunnel removal is expected to be complete by 2032 and would be similar to construction of the new tunnel but in reverse. As the existing tunnel is to be removed, a number of utilities located within the tunnel will need to be relocated, most notably a 230 kilovolt transmission line owned by BC Hydro. As the line is owned by BC Hydro, they are responsible for determining the new location of the transmission line as part of their capital planning process. The ministry, including the chief engineer, is working closely with BC Hydro to explore the feasibility of various relocation options. Lastly, I would like to point out that the scope includes connection of the multi-use path to the existing active transportation networks immediately north and south of the tunnel, including connection to the path created for the new Steveson Interchange. Now I'd like to turn over the presentation to Lauren to provide a brief update on the Steveson Interchange project. Lauren?
Thanks very much, Donald. Hello, everyone. Great to see familiar faces. The Steveson Interchange project is progressing quickly. We have wrapped up our request for qualifications process as of August 12th and had a number of responses. I'm pleased to let you know we have now entered into the request for proposal stage of procurement. The RFP will close in early 2022, and we expect design work to begin in spring of 2022. Initial site works are expected to begin in summer of 2022, so next year. In the meantime, we will continue engaging with stakeholders in the PND project to provide early information on the project. Finally, our big push for the month of November will be to have the project-specific municipal agreement with the City of Richmond signed off either at the end of November or early December so that we can begin providing the state capacity funding to support the project and during design work and other project information once the design build contractor is brought on board. We feel this document is important to formalize and outline the processes and commitments. It will be followed by the project team, our contractor, and the city to ensure close collaboration throughout. City staff have been very collaborative with our province project team and provided important input into the design process. I will now pass the presentation over to Darcy, environmental lead for the Georgia Master Crossing Program. He'll be discussing 2 slides on the environmental assessment process crossing, which is a separate certificate from the one the corridor improvements are being delivered on. Thank you very much. The power just came on. We had a power.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I'm going to give you a short overview of the environmental assessment process that applies to the new ITT project. So the ITT project Donald described will be reviewable under the Reviewable Projects Regulation and the Environmental Assessment Act of 2018, which came into force in late 2019. The new BEC Environmental Assessment Act is characterized as 8 key phases that you see here on the screen, and it specifically includes several new requirements for project proponents that are entering into environmental assessments, and these include providing significant avenues for Indigenous groups to be involved throughout the process, and also additional opportunities for the public, including local communities, to be involved in early stages. One of these phases is the early engagement. This is the first phase of the concept of the environmental assessment, where proponents engage with the relevant parties, including the City of Richmond, to identify preliminary interests and concerns that will be addressed during the remainder of the EA. In the new Act, there's 570 days legislative review time, which you can see on the left-hand side of the slide. These include phases throughout early engagement, process planning, application review, recommendation, and decision. And these periods is where the Environmental Assessment Office, EAO for short, is leading the process. During these periods, there are several opportunities for the public, local government agencies, key stakeholders, and Indigenous groups to participate in the process through public comment periods, open houses, and the technical working group. There are also phases on this slide that do not have a legislated timeline, and this is where we as the proponents completing our baseline and conducting our effect assessments, preparing our applications, and responding to comments. The EAO has produced guidance documents for each of these phases, and these are available on the EAO's website. As I've mentioned, the process takes time and careful coordination to avoid and identify adverse effects, integrate feedback, and maximize the benefits of the project in the long term. To commence the early engagement phase, we'll be submitting 2 documents to the Environmental Assessment Office. These include the initial project description and the engagement plan. We'll be sharing these documents with staff at the City of Richmond to solicit some early feedback and integrate these early feedback before we submit it to the environmental assessment. We're hoping to be able to commence the environmental assessment phase, or the early engagement phase of the environmental assessment, in early 2022. And that concludes my review of the environmental assessment process, and I can pass it back to Donald.
Thank you, Darcy. In terms of timeline for the program as a whole, the 3 transit and cycling projects at Bridgeport Road, the Highway 17 interchange, and the Highway 99 bus on shoulder transit lanes in Delta have been awarded to construction contractors, and we expect them to be in service by 2023. The Steveson Highway interchange is currently in the RFP stage, and we are working to secure a design-build contractor for early 2022. We expect this project to be completed in the 3rd quarter of 2025. With respect to the crossing, as Darcy mentioned, the project is currently in the pre-early engagement phase of the environmental assessment, and we anticipate making our initial submission of our initial project description and engagement plan to the EAO in early 2022, with a target of achieving the environmental assessment certificate by the end of 2024. The timeline also includes additional regulatory and permitting time for processes that must occur after receipt of an environmental assessment certificate. This puts construction beginning in approximately 2026, with completion in 2030. Finally, the existing tunnel will take approximately 2 years to be removed, which brings us to a total completion date of 2032. It's expected that, as I mentioned earlier, it's expected the existing tunnel will stay in operation during delivery of the new crossing. This concludes our presentation, and we thank you for your time and interest in this exciting project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll see what questions there are, but first of all, on the Steveson Interchange, we have made some extensive comments on that. Are you familiar with that?
Thank you,
Hi, Your Worship. Thank you, Darcy. Hi, Your Worship. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
Yes, staff have been in very close contact with us and provided comments to our team directly that were provided to them.
All right, then I'll just add one further comment. We've got some questions coming. For the utilities, one of the things we said in our letter to you was that we particularly want those hydro lines to go into the new tunnel. One of the biggest weaknesses of the old, the big bridge, as it were, was that we were going to be stuck with these new big transmission towers, and frankly, we don't want any part of it. So I just want to highlight that for you. We'll go to questions. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I must say it's really nice to be able to work collaboratively with the province. It's a wonderful thing. I have a couple of questions. In page 3, it shows a picture of the tunnel from the Delta side. It would look as though on that page that the cycling and biking lane was going to be on the east side of the tunnel. Wouldn't it make more sense to have it on the west side, where a number of people will be entering and exiting the pedestrian and cycling lane?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I'll turn this over to Donald from our side.
Through the mayor to Councillor Day, the exact location of the side of the cycling lane has not been a definitive decision. We look forward to working with the region and all stakeholders in the confirming what works best for the region. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure that people from Delta and Richmond would think the west side was the best, so if you just leave that there. Then I had another couple questions. Rice Mill Road is going to be, the overpass is going to be enlarged, and yet you mentioned there was no plan to extend Rice Mill Road to Stevenson Highway. I think this is a real lost opportunity. Can you explain the rationalization of why you wouldn't want to, use this brand new overpass to its best ability, best use?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn that over to Donald as well.
Through the mayor to Councillor Day, we appreciate the comment. I guess I would like to reiterate that TI Corp is delivering approved scope. The approved scope was established through the independent technical review and the ongoing consultation in 2019-2020, and the Rice Mill Road connections are not part of that approved scope. With respect to the increased size of the structure, largely it's a widening to accommodate the additional, we're going from a 4-lane crossing to an 8 lanes. So it's more of a widening rather than a wider road. I guess a longer maybe be a more appropriate term.
Okay. Well, we're probably going to keep bugging you about that.
All right.
I just one last question. I wanted to ask about the pedestrian cycling lane. It's supposed to be 16.4 feet, basically 5 meters. Is that enough room to accommodate e-bikes, regular bikes, and pedestrians? Because that seems quite narrow.
Thank you, Councillor. Donald.
Through the mayor to Councillor Day, appreciate the interest in the active transportation and the importance. The minimum width through the TAC guidelines, I believe, is 4 meters. We actually went with 5 meters, so the width, as you said, to give that additional room for the tunnel, but also future flexibility. The exact design will be determined in consultation as part of the environmental assessment process, but appreciate your feeling on this. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Steves.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really pleased we're finally back on track. My question goes way back to 2007, when we were on track at that time when Kevin Falcon was the minister, and we met with him, and he was planning to rebuild the tunnel, which we're doing now. But he modified the old tunnel for rapid bus and made changes all along the Delta part of the highway and some changes in the tunnel, and then of course it all went kaput. So I've got my first question, and his plan was eventually that we might even be able to have, after we build up ridership, we might have ground level LRT. So my question is your plan for the bus in that special lane on each side of the highway, will that be rapid bus? We had rapid bus to downtown Richmond before the SkyTrain came in, and it worked extremely well. So I'm just wondering what kind of bus service we're looking at.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll hand that to Donald.
Through the mayor to Councillor Steves. Yes, in working closely with TransLink and Metro Vancouver and the need for transit service on the corridor, that is the the expectation is for a rapid bus service to utilize this bus lane with utilizing the building out the best capability of the bus on shoulder system.
And in terms of LRT, I keep asking this question. I'm not quite sure of the answer. Can that bus lane be converted to joint buses and LRT in the not SkyTrain, but ordinary LRT in the future, or would we need another tube?
Thanks, Councillor. Donald?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Steves, we appreciate the intention and importance of transit to the community and users. I'll say no, the bus on shouldering would not be convertible to LRT. I can provide some additional details on that rationale, or we can connect later.
That's fine. And final question I've got is for the bus lane. When it became a bridge, a whole pile of land was expropriated on the west side of farmland. Will that land be utilized, or will it be free to go back to farmland again? They were trying to get some of the city property as well. We didn't deal with it because we were opposed to the bridge, and we were opposed to the interchange the way it was. But we'd like to get on with our park, and I'm not sure what would happen with that strip of land.
Thank you, Councillor. Donald?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Steves, I'm not fully in tune with the impact of that land. I would have to get back to you, but we do recognize the importance of impacts to not just properties, residential and business, and agricultural land as well. But I'd be happy to follow up with more information.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks very much, and good luck on it. We're with you.
Thank you. Appreciate the support.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair, and thank you for the report. It is an exciting project for sure. Just a couple questions. The HOV lane that exists now for southbound traffic on 99 heading from the Oak Bridge to Stevenson Highway, is that going to be gone? Is there going to be an HOV lane?
Thank you, Councillor Hobbs. Donald?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Hobbs, the current HOV lanes on Highway 99 operate as queue jumps for the existing tunnel. These HOV queue jumps will be removed once a new crossing is in operation. We are in sync with the South Coast region on this. The new crossing will have 3 general purpose lanes and 1 dedicated transit lane in each direction, which was a crossing configuration endorsed by the region. In addition to the dedicated transit lanes, the crossing will also provide the new active transportation connection, providing some alternatives to travel by transit or car.
Okay, just to clarify, so that is not going to exist. The HOV lane also exists for people who qualify to use it, who may be entering Richmond and going off on Stevenson Highway as well. So with the Rice Mill Road, you mentioned that there will be no ramp for vehicles to use to get onto the highway. That makes sense. But I take it there will be emergency access for emergency vehicles, correct?
Thank you, Councillor. Donald?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Hobbs, I just need a clarification on what you mean by emergency access.
Well, I mean, if there's...
Is it from Rice Mill or...
I mean, if there's an emergency, there'll be a ramp there with some sort of gate, probably electronically controlled, where fire trucks, police cars, ambulances can gain access to the highway and possibly the tunnel, similar to what there is now. There's a ramp there.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Hobbs, I was not aware of the ramp. I will have to take this question away and follow up.
Sure, it's not a ramp for the public, but it's emergency access available. And it's available for cheaters too, the way it is right now, but that's not advised. So,
sorry, I was just going to add, like, part of the environmental assessment process and our future development is working closely with emergency responders on what's needed and works best, both from a construction but also an operations aspect.
sure.
So we look forward to this. This is good input. Thank you.
Sure, and last question through the chair. For the southbound traffic going on to Stevenson Highway, southbound on 99, exiting to go westbound or eastbound on Stevenson Highway, you are planning on putting a traffic signal in at the end of that lane when traffic goes off to exit onto Stevenson Highway to travel primarily westbound is what I'm talking about. Because right now it's a free flow of traffic there with a crosswalk.
Thank you, Councillor. Donald?
I'll direct this question to Lauren. Thank you.
For the Mayor to Councillor Hobbs, do you mind just repeating the question?
Sure. For traffic that's heading southbound on Highway 99 in the far right lane to exit onto Steveson Highway, where you can go back over the overpass to go eastbound, but I'm talking about the traffic that goes west, so you curve to the right and you go westbound. Right now, that single lane has a dedicated lane in front of it. There's a crosswalk. People go slow and you do stop for pedestrians when they're there. But right now, there's no traffic light. My understanding is that the plan is to put a traffic signal in there so that traffic would be regulated by the traffic control device. Is that still the plan?
Through the mayor to Councillor Hobbs, yes, that is still the plan.
Okay, my only comment on that, and I might be in a minority, is just that that will cause a backup on the exit lane going on to Stevenson Highway, where really none exists now, even in the heaviest traffic. So, and I understand there's a pedestrian issue with the crosswalk. I think there are ways to improve that with flashing yellow lights that are activated, better signage, better lights. But having driven that, I don't know how many times in my life, that is one part of that whole interchange that actually works fairly smoothly, including when pedestrians have to cross and cyclists. But I won't belabor it. Thank you.
All right.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hobbs, thank you very much, and we'll continue to work with your staff to understand any concerns and work through the traffic modeling.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you to the delegates for being here and providing the program update. Just a few questions to the chair to you. First of all, many of them are follow-up from previous councillor questions and comments. The first one is in regards to the south transit shoulder lane on your map. I think in your report it's page 4. In our package it's GP10, the map with the colors. So does that south transit shoulder lane, does that utilize what work has already been done, or will more riparian area and ecologically sensitive tree habitat and farmland be taken into this project, or is it going to use what's already been compacted with the sand?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn this over to Donald to start, and we can tie in with Darcy on the environmental front as Donald directs.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wolf, the exact details of the tie-in are not 100% fully defined at this point. It will be assessed during the environmental assessment process. As much as possible, we would be looking to reuse work that has been done from the previous iterations of the project. If you want additional information, we'll be happy to follow up when it becomes available.
Yes, through the chair, when that becomes available, I'd appreciate, I'm sure we'd all appreciate that. Thanks. My next question relating to the same page, the map overview there, crossing project scope overview. It shows where the linear work is going to be, but obviously there'll be a lot other surface area utilized for project work and loading equipment and storage of stuff and everything else. What's the latest on the impact for? You could just speak specifically to two areas: the foreshore, the river's edge around this project area, where the two red lines go over the blue line. Like how much actual space is going to be employed for this project? And then the second area, these islands. Like here, it shows there's just a little line going over it. But are we talking about like massive footprint for this project in those two areas?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn that over to Donald. And I heard two questions in there. First about impacts to the river's edge, and second to impacts to Dees Island. So why don't we start with the river's edge, Donald?
River's edge, I pass it to Darcy. Largely the impact, I guess I'll start with to the park. Largely the impact to the Dees Island Park will be within the ministry's right-of-way. There could be some impact in areas in the less utilized. Also, expectation there'll be some restrictions to access during construction. We know it's an important part to the region and the impacts, and we look forward to impact in ways of discussions of minimizing those impacts, but also the after construction of the park. I will have to pass it to Darcy for discussion on the foreshore areas and environmentally sensitive areas. Darcy, please.
Sure. So right now we're just looking at the footprint of the ITT within the minister's right of way in terms of magnitude, but we'll be assessing a larger boundary as part of the environmental assessment process to make sure that we're capturing the context for how the project activities and components fit in with the surroundings in the immediate vicinity, and then at a regional scale as well. So we're looking at them at a couple different scales. Hopefully that's helpful and answers your question.
It very much does. Thank you, through the chair. My second last question to the delegates is, if there were, going back to the item around the transmission lines, the BC Hydro discussions I hear are ongoing, what's the option for if those transmission lines are going to go into this 8-lane tunnel? Will they be above the pedestrian portion? Will they be a whole separate portion in between? Like, if it is an option, or is that not shared yet? There's still in talks about that. That's okay if you don't have the answer on that one.
Thank you, Councillor. Donald?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wolf, we don't have a specific answer on the relocation for the transmission line. I can say that BC Hydro as owner is their capital planning process. The ministry has been in close collaboration with Hydro on options, including assessment of the new tunnel. But anything more specific than that is not available at this time. But we do understand the importance of this to not just the city of Richmond, city of Delta, but the region, and Hydro does as well.
Okay, thank you. I just have, through the chair to delegate, just one last question and then a brief comment, I promise. The last question is multi-use, or the phrase being used to describe lots of modes of transportation. Another way to call it is self-powered rolling devices. So what's the position here? Are all of those, unless it's a gas-powered motorcycle, they will go with the cars and trucks, but all those electric devices, they would all go in the pedestrian tube? Or portion of the tube, sorry?
Thank you, Councillor. Donald?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wolf, similar to discussion with Councillor Day, the exact specifics of the utilization operations of the multi-use path are to be determined. I can say from my own personal experience, it is a very, changing times with the amount and various configurations of modes of transportation using these multi-use pathways. But we look forward to working with the city's key stakeholders on the function and operation of those multi-use paths.
Appreciate that. Thank you. My final comment, then, if I may, through the chair to the delegates. I like the fact that it's fluid. Which side is the pedestrian portion going to go? Because I actually think we should have one on both sides. I think there should be one that is for the non-powered devices, for walking and regular cycling and wheeling, and another side for what the future brings. And we have a good glimpse of it now, the amount of devices people are using, and will continue to be creative and go faster. So I think it's essential that those get separated. A collision between a few of them, that's going to tie up all the people in behind on both directions, and it seems incredible that we would leave all that chaos within 5-meter window.
Thank you. No. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you for coming out and talking to us about this. Now, you say it's going to be a design-build contract. And now I know we've had a few challenges experienced by others in the region with this approach to design-build. So can you tell me more as to why this particular methodology has been chosen?
Thank you, Councillor Liu. I'll also turn that over to Donald.
Through the mayor to Councillor Liu, part of the business case process is not just on the scope and service delivery options, but is also on the procurement and delivery model for the project. Through a series of multiple criteria analysis, looking at both considerations of specific project, design and construction, technical delivery operations and input, the design build was recommended model for this procurement. I can say that we are very attuned to lessons learned from the other ministry projects. One of the I think the key mandates for TI Corp is to build on those lessons learned and have that expertise developed in-house in the public sector. So we're very attuned to, now that we have the historical knowledge from the team that goes from one project to the next, building on those lessons learned. And we're hopefully that is helpful, or if I can elaborate more.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the delegation. Well, thank you very much for presenting to us today. Lots of information, and as I'm sure you are aware, this is a much-awaited project in Richmond and the region. So on your slide about the environmental assessment process, and thank you for that, can you tell me where in the timeline would be the first opportunity for the public to have comment? Because I get asked that a lot. People want information about that. They have thoughts, they have ideas, they have comments, and they want to know when they'll be able to share that with the project team.
Thank you, Councillor. As the Director of Engagement, I appreciate that question greatly, but I'll turn it over to Darcy to speak towards the EA.
Through the Mayor to the Councillor. Yes, so the first opportunity for the public to participate in the environmental assessment process occurs in the early engagement phase. And that's the very first phase of the environmental assessment. And that's triggered by the submission of the initial project description and the engagement plan. So once we submit those documents to the EAO will do it'll be a completeness check, and that should be done over maybe 2 weeks. And then what they'll do is they'll post those documents on their EPIC website, and then they'll start scheduling what that public comment period, when that public comment period will occur. And our engagement team will also be coordinating some engagement opportunities with our website and possibly an open house and some forms of virtual engagement on those documents with some feedback from the public.
And do you have any idea of an approximate timeline for that?
We're hoping to submit those documents in early 2022, maybe February potentially. So something around the public comment period could happen as early as March, but I feel comfortable saying March, April, May, something like in those 3 months.
I appreciate that. Thanks very much.
All right, now, Councillor Wolf, you had something more to say. Okay, we'll carry on. Thank you very much to the delegation for your engagement with us. Please continue to communicate and coordinate with us. We're obviously very interested in this and have been well, since 2008 or 2007, as Councillor Steve says. So please keep us advised. We do want to be involved, and we do want the public to be involved and make sure that we get all the input to you. Okay, so thank you very much. Now we'll carry on with our agenda. On the amendments to the council procedures, Madam Clerk, did you have anything to add to your report?
I have nothing further to add, but I can certainly answer questions, Your Worship.
All right, well, let's see what we have by way of questions. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Chair, to staff. So is the vision then that this would be in perpetuity, that we would be able to attend meetings virtually?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the purpose of the proposed bylaw amendment is to formalize the current hybrid model that council is meeting in, and that's the electronic participation to allow members to participate remotely when they are unable to attend in person. And in addition, the proposed bylaw amendment enables the holding of electronic meetings. That is when all elected officials would be remote, and that would be at the discretion of the mayor and or the committee chair.
All right.
Is there a timeline on this, or is this for forever?
This is a permanent bylaw, correct?
That is correct.
Yes. So this is to take over from the temporary measures that we brought in from time to time. Councillor Hobbs. What? Just hang on a sec. What's going on here? Okay, it's on now.
Thank you, and through the chair. Thank you for the report, and I just have a quick comment and a question. I think overall this is a very good idea because I think it improves accessibility for a lot of different people, the public and for council as well at different times. My one comment / concern is about the openness of the wording, which I understand is the legislation provided by the provincial government, but in, I think, the regulations in the background, and it's mentioned in this report on page 19, I believe, that best practice should be that, you know, electronic meetings aren't a substitute for in-person meetings, and I understand that. So my concern is just about the openness of the current wording of the bylaw, and I'm wondering if there's any way that we can still be consistent with the legislation, but perhaps not have it so wide open as it is now. And I'd be interested in hearing other people's thoughts on it, because overall it's a good thing.
Now, let's clarify or focus on what your comments are. Now, electronic meetings, so it's basically the chair of the meeting can allow participation, or sorry, can say that we're going to have a virtual meeting. Okay. I take it from your comments, you're talking about electronic participation where someone says they're unable to attend. And I'm sure in this group that would never happen, but it could happen that there's not, you know, some pretty questionable stuff. It could happen. So I wonder if I could suggest, based on what you said, that on page GP 29, where we have the actual bylaw, we add the requirement, if someone says they are unable to attend, then that person needs a council resolution at the meeting. Wouldn't that stem a lot of the potential challenges to the situation?
You're right in everything you said about what I intended to say. But, and I take it that probably would resolve it. I just want to be clear that this isn't about anybody here. It's a good thing to have. It's just a way of tightening up a very broad term that was given to us by the province.
Right.
Your Worship, Your Worship, if I may, regarding that language, the community charter, the enabling section, section 128, which has been carried forward through the amendments to the community charter, really presents a binary choice. It's whether or not, if you're going to allow electronic participation, it will occur in circumstances where the member is unable to attend. It doesn't contemplate a range or a further refinement of what unable to attend means, and I think the legislature was purposeful in that binary choice.
Well, with respect, Tony, the lead words there are, if this is authorized by procedure bylaw and the requirements of subsection 2 are met. If this is authorized by a procedure bylaw, so in our procedure bylaw, we say that you have to have a resolution of council in order to have electronic participation.
Your Worship, my point was simply that, as it's phrased, is if it is authorized by procedure bylaw, so it's either a yes or a no, and if the answer is yes, then the language of the legislation would kick in, which is in circumstances where that member is unable to attend, and that would be the discretion of the council member. Obviously, to the extent there is some abuse, which inevitably could happen, which could then lead to a court proceeding, then it would be for the courts to decide, you know, whether that wording deserves more refinement. But as it currently stands, in my opinion, would be that it is really a binary choice. If council chooses to have electronic participation, then it would be based on the language as set out in the legislation.
With the greatest of respect, I know how good you are at what you do. But the way I read it is if this is authorized by a procedure bylaw, then the procedure bylaw can say that you need a council resolution. And then you've got that binary choice. That's the way I see it. So anyway, we'll get to more comments. Councillor Steves.
Yeah, thanks. In terms of the public, it's rather interesting. I just wanted to pass on a comment going way back to the 60s when we first got cable television. In Vancouver, I think it was the Comox area, they set up the TV where the public could actually phone in, watch it on television, which we had for a while here in Richmond. They showed the TV programs, but in Vancouver Island, the area had set it up in that area that the public could actually watch the program and they could phone in and at certain times and give their comments on it, similar to what we do at the beginning of a meeting or sometimes in a committee meeting. And I remember suggesting that years ago, and we never did it. But here we are with COVID, and now we're doing it. And I think it's good that we're able to continue that the public can actually watch and can participate, and we can actually, if they're on the agenda, they can actually make their presentations without having to come to the council meeting. I think it's a great idea. I think it'll be more inclusive with the public that way.
Fair enough. All right, those are all the hands that were up. So my suggestion is let's have someone move it, and then we can deal with this issue of whether we want a council resolution. So it's moved and seconded as written. So does someone want to move an amendment to make it necessary for electronic participation that there would be council would approve that non-attendance or the virtual attendance by resolution? So moved and seconded. Councillor McNulty, you just moved that amendment.
Your Worship.
Oh, sorry, just a minute. Okay, you're now on.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. The reason I moved that, I thought, even before this came, that you had to have the procedural bylaw. I understand in the scriptures too, if you want a leave of absence, you have to have a procedural bylaw to do so. So to attend, if you can leave, why can't you attend? And why don't we be consistent is what I'm getting at. So I support you 100%, Your Worship, and your interpretation of that. So thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I think, I would hope that people use their discretion appropriately, and but I also think that people have a right to a certain bit of privacy or whatever. If you've got a sick child or a health issue or something, some reason that's preventing you from coming, and you want council to all either weigh in somehow and approve it as a council resolution, and somehow you have to come with your hat in your hand and explain what your problem is. I don't know that that's fair or, in keeping with the spirit of this. And obviously it opens up room for abuse. On the other hand, if, I don't imagine anyone's going to go off to Nicaragua and have all their meetings for a whole year from somewhere else and not show up. I think the public will pretty much figure out that they're not actually doing their job. And I think protecting people's privacy and their own interests and treating adults like adults is a better way to go.
Yeah, just before I go to Councillor Day and Councillor McPhail, I don't think we should get hung up on how deeply we have to drill into motivation. Just I've got an illness in the family would be enough for me, or whatever. We have had situations going way back where people took vacations in Mexico and wanted to participate just because they chose to do it that way. And, then I think it becomes more of a matter of principle. I agree with Councillor Hobbs that we are not talking about any possible abuse by any current member of council. There's just no way. There's just no way. But it could, who knows in the future, and it could happen. So I think it's a good little check mark to place on it. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mayor Brody. I mean, obviously, the public would prefer that we attend the meeting in person. My question is, I believe there is a rule where if a councillor misses a certain amount of meetings, that they either don't get paid or can lose their seat on council. Would this be tied in with that?
Through your worship, to count today, this is different. If a person is unable to attend and their participation is permitted electronically, then they are deemed to have attended in person. And the other point I would make is that if in circumstances where someone's unable to attend, they're often not aware. I would imagine they would not be aware in advance in some cases, which can create. So the requirement to have a resolution if they're unable to attend will create a complexity, and it would be difficult to enforce.
I agree. I think that if you have to, every time that you can't make a meeting and you want to be virtual, you have to have a special resolution. That's going to get really onerous.
It's not a special resolution, Councillor. It's just a resolution, just like we have a resolution to allow someone to come into a closed meeting. It would be simply, Councillor so-and-so has urgent family circumstances. Are we okay with remote participation? Yes, no. And that it's just that simple. And the rule that I think you're referring to, I think what the charter says, if you miss 4 council meetings in a row, you are automatically, I think, disqualified. I think that's how it works. And so for our council, that would be, because we have 2 a month, it would be 2 months worth. All right, Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. Well, I understand the intent, and my question is similar to the previous speaker. I was trying to understand the process, and as we look at the meeting today, many of us are at home today. So what is the impact to those of us who are at home today going forward then if this passes?
This is electronic meeting, this is electronic participation, not electronic meetings. We've said that we're having electronic meetings, for the foreseeable future till the COVID situation clears up. So then, I mean, you can still come in and 3 councillors have, but you can all participate remotely. This is when you have an in-person meeting and someone wants to attend virtually. Okay?
3.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question then on this amendment. All those in favor, if I can see some hands. All those who are opposed. Councillor McPhail is opposed, Councillor Day is opposed, Councillor Liu is opposed. That's what I'm seeing. Councillor Al, were you wanting to address this or just generally? Okay, so that amendment is carried. Going to Councillor Al on the main motion. Okay, so we're going to call the question on the main motion, which has been slightly amended on that one. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any opposed? I'm not seeing anything, so that's carried. Okay, so now we are adjourned, and I'll call the finance meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we've got the 2 sets of rates or budgets. The first one is on the district energy utility rates. John Irving or Alan Polstolka, do you have anything to add?
Your Worship, it's Alan Postolka here. I have nothing to add, but I can answer any questions.
All right. I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, okay. Councillor Hobbs?
Oh, thank you. And through the chair, I'm hearing a bit of an echo there. First of all, I just want to say, through the chair, thank you for the report. It was my first time reading through one of these super detailed, lots of information. So just on the Lulu Island Energy, it makes total sense, of course, to cover capital operating costs and that type of thing. But one question is, as more buildings and subscribers come online, so to speak, will the costs typically, would you predict that they would come down at all as it gets dispersed over a wider number of buildings and users?
Your Worship, to Councillor Hobbs. It is, as you understand, these utilities are quite early in their life. And as we build, and in order to connect more customers, we will also have to add more capital investment in the infrastructure. Of course, long term, the goal is if the utilities run efficiently and we use low carbon technologies and energy, that typically depends at minimum on conventional energy sources, the cost could go also down. Our overall goal is to reduce this cost. And example of that is Alexandra DU, which we currently managed to kind of reduce the cost below the conventional energy sources.
Sure, yeah, I did notice that. And just two more questions, if that's all right, through the chair. With the Lulu Island and the Olympic Village, there was a mention on page 12 of $6.2 million in terms of a grant. And I wondered what percentage does that represent of that project?
Your Worship, to Councillor Hobbs, that's approximately 30% of the project.
Okay, that's a good chunk. And my last question is, just with the high capital costs, my understanding was that a lot of the utilities are kind of sold after they're constructed to the city in terms of the energy. So the $30 to $40 million infrastructure, what does that represent? I realize you probably know this off the top of your head, but what are we looking at? What kind of infrastructure is that you're talking about for that investment?
To Your Worship, to Councillor Hobbs, I'm sorry, I didn't understand fully the question.
Okay, well, the capital costs, what is it that we're, through the chair, the capital costs that we're talking about, what's an example of that? What are we talking about in terms of the district energy areas like the Oval? Is it like what drives that cost?
I probably would have given it to Jocelyn or somebody.
Through
I'm not on camera. No, I'm not on mic or camera. Yeah, you can go there. Yeah.
To Your Worship, to Councillor.
No, it won't be in there for sure.
Hobbs.
Please, everybody, please mute your microphones, except the speaker. Go ahead, Ellen.
Thank you. To Your Worship, to Councillor Hobbs. Depends on technology. That's like, for example, in ADU, we have installed 2 geoexchange fields, which produces enough energy to fully service, I think, 2.5 million square feet, which at the end of the day, it's less than $30 million, if that's what you fully understand your question.
It is kind of. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. Well, thank you for the report. And I'm just wondering, are we able, and I know the rates for each of the district energy utilities, the OVDEU and the CCDEU, it's recommended 4% and the ADEU is 1%. Are we able to quantify that in an average increase per household? Because, people look at that and they go, really, what does that mean to my budget? How much a month or how much a year is that going to be?
To Your Worship, to Councillor McPhail, we can provide exact answer. We haven't did this analysis. I don't have it from top of my mind, but we can provide this information.
Well, thank you. I think that would be helpful. Thanks very much.
Okay, would someone like to move it? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we move to the utility budgets. And what I propose to do with this, staff, I'm going to ask staff to, if you've got any kind of overall comments, that's okay, make those. And then we'll go through the various utilities. I think it's water, then sewer, then, we'll just go after it one by one and ultimately coming out with a resolution. So, Jason Ho, Mike Ching, and Suzanne Bycraft, who would like to, do any of you want to make overall comments just before we get into the specific, utilities?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things to highlight here. The majority of the city's utility budgets are for regional costs, such as Metro Vancouver and solid waste contracts. Also wanted to highlight that we have some new positions that are being recommended for each utility, and these have involved quite extensive analysis and prioritization process, along with developing business cases. That's taken us several months to put together to review.
Well, tell us about that process. Some department feels that they should have another person. Then where does it go and what happens?
Your Worship, maybe I could just jump in on that. Regardless of the business area, whether it's Lulu Island or our utilities or any other unit within the City of Richmond, the corporation, it goes through the same process. We start our budgeting process identifying additional levels, additional position needs, and capital needs 6 months prior to this date when it comes forward to Council for consideration. Prior to that, these considerations are obviously developing over years. But for formal submission to our annual process, it starts generally 6 months before the reports come to Council. It's vetted through the origin department. It goes through a corporate-wide review team that reviews all capital and additional level requests, and that team ultimately makes recommendations to the senior management team for their review. So these requests on the various utilities have gone through that entire process, and there was additional scrutiny that was done just over the last month through additional comments coming from the CAO and SMT on these. So what you see is a culmination of quite a long and extensive process for analyzing all of these requirements to ensure they actually represent the priorities of the corporation.
Okay, now Councillor McNulty, you've got your hand up. Is it a general question? Okay, we're going to get into the water utility, first of all. Okay, so let's go to the water utility, and who would like to speak to that one?
Mr. Chair, I can speak to that one. So with the water utility, again, primary driver is the Metro Vancouver costs that are applicable to the city's water rates. As you can see in Figure 3 on FIN 33, Metro Vancouver's costs account for 56% of the city's budget. This has gradually gone up over the past 16 years. In 2006, it accounted for 44% of our budget. Also in Figure 1, page FIN 32, that shows the cumulative percentage increase since 2006, comparing Metro Vancouver with the city.
Okay, Jason, I'm going to ask you, we've all read the report, so we know what's in it. What you need to do is highlight anything specific you want to emphasize, but mostly get into what's on FIN 31. What's the differences between the options?
Other than the Metro Vancouver impacts, nothing further. But option 1 for this utility includes only non-discretionary increases. Option 2 is the recommended option, which includes 2 zero net cost option positions, as well as mandatory metering for multifamily properties. That stems from Council asking staff back in May to look into mandatory multifamily metering as part of this report. Option 3 includes option 2 and removing the rate stabilization drawdown.
All right.
I would just add to that brief summary, the recommended option with the multifamily water metering program and the recommended additional positions in the context of the rapidly increasing costs for Metro Vancouver. At the end of their 5-year plan, as identified in here, they'll likely represent 70 or 80% of our costs. It's been a real challenge to control their cost escalation, but these elements in option 2 are really represent our primary response to controlling those costs. And with additional conservation measures and additional ability to manage cross-connection control and things like that, with additional metering in our multifamily areas, this will all collectively enable us to reduce usage of water, and so we won't have to purchase as much from Metro Vancouver, and that'll be the primary lever we have internally to control those costs going forward. So we expect all of those measures to return real cash value to the city over the long term.
All right, we'll go to questions just on the water utility. Councillor McNulty.
Worship, I don't want to get into it too much because I think even council may not understand it. It's suggested that on page 29 there's 4.1% increase, and for clean water and what have you, that is the percentage that we are going to, through you to staff, we're going to raise the utility budget. I guess what I have on page 31, it would be nice if we had in option 1, 2, and 3 the percentages listed. You know, if we went with option 1, it will be increase of X percentage. I can't find that anywhere. On option 3, I may want to go with option 3 if it was a 0.1% more. Instead of 4.1, it's 4.2. So I think for futures, I think all the way through, it would be worth it. I do have a question, if I may. Given this is all Metro Vancouver, which is out of our control, and I'm not going to get in the knots and crosses of it, and it comes every year, and you can grandstand and say, well, I'm against it or I'm for it, but I want clean water. In the report, you have listed what Metro Vancouver will do this year, next year, and the next year, what is proposed. We had a council of councils that also gave that report in their 5-year report, which I think every member of council attended. How, and that's why I wanted to ask that question, Your Worship, maybe you should ask him, how are we fit to handle the increase? For example, in 2023, water is going to go up double in terms of Metro Vancouver's request, and it's going to go up a third again the year after. So I guess my question is, how are we with our stabilizations and subsidization, which I agree with and I support to make it as low as we can for the taxpayer? How are we fit for that?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, our rate stabilization provision balance is very healthy, and we've built it up to that level to put us in a good position to address those type of rate increases that are coming in the future years.
Okay, well, I'm concerned about future councils if we get too far. No, I thought Your Worship staff did a good job on all of this and laying it out, and I'm quite happy to support the rates. I don't like them. I'd love to see them lower, but given what's coming down the road, I think we have to be cautious this year and especially prepare for next year and the year after for those that are, and I'm glad to hear staff saying we're I won't say totally solvent, but we can handle what's coming down the road. I think we'll be in better shape than probably any other municipality in the community. So thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair and the staff. Well, first of all, again, this is a very detailed report and very impressive in some ways. I think it is important, it's been mentioned for anybody in the public to actually look and see how much is driven by Metro Vancouver and charges that, you know, we do have to pay. So one question is, and it is interesting too, and I've heard this mentioned before, that even with a population growth of about 25%, our water usage is down 12%, so that's good. But can you just explain to me what some of the drivers have been to Metro Vancouver's drastic increase? I think it's 189% that you mentioned on about page 83 since 2006, versus Richmond's costs, which have been much lower. But you know, for my education and for other people's education, what's driving that? Because to anybody, that would sound like a huge increase.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, Metro Vancouver has a number of very large capital projects that have occurred over the years. For example, the Seymour Capilano filtration plant being one of them. For the city, we're fortunate enough to have council-supported water conservation programs and metering, which have done an excellent job in mitigating those impacts, controlling our consumption and reducing costs for ratepayers.
Okay, thanks. And on page 34, you do talk about the metering and recommendation, I think, is to go from 1.2 to $3 million, and shortening the time frame with multi-family residences from 40 years to 17 to get them metered, if I'm reading all that correctly. But that's a pretty big increase in that amount of money. So can you just maybe explain what the cost and the benefit is to increasing that and shortening the time frame? And I guess one of the things that might tie into it is the amount of money that we'd end up paying out over time to Metro Vancouver for the amount of water we used. But could you explain that a little bit?
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs. The benefits to water metering include equity, conservation, leak detection, and reduced load on the sanitary system. And we've seen those benefits since we've progressively metered the city over the past couple of decades. So certainly as we finish that up right now, approximately 83% of the city's water usage is metered. So by metering the last 17%, that'll take us that much, bring us that much further ahead in putting the city in a good position.
All right, thanks. And one last question. It's just the, I think the cost offset mentioned on page 36, I think this is still in the right section, about the hydro permit revenue and the increase in that. And that's not quite clear to me. So the anticipated increase in revenue for hydrant permits, that is due to an increase in what we charge for that permit, or is that entirely due to an increase in the number of permits being issued? And maybe you could just explain a little bit what those represent, like what is a permit issued for?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, these are permits that we issue for people to access and use the fire hydrant for various purposes. And we do expect that revenue to increase because the demand for those are increasing as we're getting more requests from farmers to use potable water for their plants, or for growing their plants. We're also getting increasing requests from the movie industry as well as from construction. So we are seeing an increased demand, which will result in increased revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just before we go to Councillor Day, I just want to mention about the water metering. My understanding is that any new projects will have meters for all the units. And so what we're talking about with water metering here is to continue retrofitting the older strata units so that they have access to the water meters. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay. Councillor Day, sorry, I lowered your hand previously. Sorry about that. But anyway, you're on.
That's okay. I just do it again. Thank you very much for everybody. Okay, so I wanted to ask a question about flat rates. So if we go to page 37, and Councillor McNulty asked earlier, what is the increases? Well, they're all there in the chart, option 1, option 2, option 3. So a single family dwelling based on an average consumption of 325 meters, it's the $484.36 flat rate. If a household wanted to bring down their water consumption by potentially reusing rain barrel water, or maybe even diverting water from showers and the kitchen sink to their garden, for example, is there any way for them to bring down their flat rate if they can significantly reduce consumption?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that is to clarify, that is the metered rate based on estimated average usage per dwelling. So certainly by metering, property owners have more control of their usage and costs. So if they reduce their usage, they'll end up paying less as well.
So, but is there a flat rate that they can get away with paying less than?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, There is a meter base rate. I believe that's only in the order of $10 to $12. So outside of that, it's just a usage-based fee.
Okay, so then, sorry, Mayor Brody, just to follow up. So if I wanted to divert my shower water or my sink water to the garden, would that be allowed?
Sorry, Councillor Day, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, sorry. So, you know, a lot of water is really still clean, even though it's been used, like shower water and sink water, you know, dishwater water. I mean, it could be used in like a garden, for example. It's not like sewer. It's just, you know, it's gray water. It's not black water. Is there a way, is it allowed for homeowners to divert that water to their, say, their vegetable garden or whatever?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I believe that is allowed.
Okay, good, thanks. I was always wondered about that. Thank you.
Yeah, you've got the single-family dwellings, they're all metered. So if you use less water and you use the gutter water with a rain barrel and put it into your garden, you're just going to use that much less and you'll have less charge. So let's see now. I think that's all for the water. So let's go to the next one, sewer. Who would like to speak to this one?
Mr. Chair, that would be me as well.
Go ahead.
So for the sewer utility budget, option 1, again, only includes non-discretionary increases. Option 2 includes a new position for a SCADA project manager. And option 3 is the recommended option, which includes option 2, as well as removing the rate stabilization drawdown.
And why are you not recommending any use of the stabilization for sewers?
Mr. Chair, the reason for that is because the projected rate increases from Metro Vancouver are expected to go way up over the next few years. So we want to preserve our provision in order to maintain our good position to address those rate increases.
Right. All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Yeah, I when I read the report, I was pretty shocked on FIN 40. The change from Metro for sewer costs goes from 4% up to 26.7% in 2024, and then 15.9% in 2025. If we approve this option 3, which is the highest amount, can we level it so that our citizens aren't facing those huge increases?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, as we get into future years and realize those rate increases from Metro Vancouver, the city's rate stabilization provision allows us the ability to reduce those impacts to a certain extent.
So we're not going to have to do like a 20% increase at some point. We can let it put over the course of 5 years.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we will do that, level it off to the best of our ability, but it all depends on how the magnitude of those increases from Metro.
Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Well, just as staff, I mean, some of the numbers here are quite astounding, actually, including increases and projected increases. When it comes to the sewer levy and the increase that's happened from 2022 to the anticipated increase from 2022 to 2026, it looks like 76% or so. And the Metro Vancouver increase since 2006 is even larger. Again, can you just comment on that? Because reading this for the first time, and I think for members of the public, they might not fully appreciate the magnitude of some of the projects. So what drives that huge increase?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, a good example of one of those major projects is the Gilbert Road sewer that Metro Vancouver has been doing past couple years and will continue over the next few years as well. Another one that'll be coming down the chain as well is the Iona wastewater treatment plant replacement that is planned for the next couple of decades.
Okay, I think that's important for people to realize. And just maybe one last comment. I was going to ask about the drawdown and not using it on this, and it seemed a little bit odd to me, but I understand from talking to staff. that there's some larger issues coming down the pipe, pun intended, down the road. So I do want to just point out that although Metro Vancouver's costs have gone up significantly, if you look on about page 39 or so, the city's increase for the city itself since 2017, I think, has been kept to about 1.8% a year. I believe that's right, if I'm looking at the right number. And I just want to point that out because to Richmond residents listening, it's important to know that the planning and the operation in Richmond has actually been quite cost effective. So a lot of the costs that we're having to deal with are costs for the metro area, which we have to deal with. So I did want to compliment staff on that. So thank you very much. And I think I understand why the 600,000 draw is not being used this year. So thank you.
All right. That's all the hands for the sewers. Then we go to flood protection, drainage, and diking utility.
Mr. Chair, the drainage and diking utility is outlined on page FIN 47. Option 1 includes non-discretionary increases, as well as the overall revenue increases due to growth. Option 2 is the recommended option, which includes $1 million transfer of drainage operations and maintenance. Last year, we started phasing over the drainage operations and maintenance from the operating budget into the utility, consistent with the other utilities. So this year, we're recommending continuing that phase strategy. And finally, option 3 includes increases to achieve the $30 million in annual revenue for the accelerated program by 2031.
All right, questions on that? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you through the chair to staff. My only question is in regards to what's recommended before us today. I recall us discussing this similar rate option previously, and staff recommended the option that is to achieve the 2031 target. So is the reason why it's not recommended today was that previous council decision to not go with that rate?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that's correct. I believe back in April, council asked us to postpone the rate increases required to the 2023 budget.
Thank you. That clarifies my only question. Thanks.
Okay, now we head to the solid waste and recycling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can take you through what's in the different options. Option 1 includes the base costs that are outside of the city's control, and those include labor and contract cost increases. Option 2 includes a new position for an environmental coordinator to manage rodent and mosquito control. That's at no additional cost due to us moving money from contracts into salaries to be able to take on that work. Plus, we're suggesting in option 2, setting aside $150,000 for rate stabilization for potential future solid waste recycling projects. Option 3 is the same as what I just described, but it also includes a pilot project for us to install C-bins in Stevenson for us to test the collection of waste from water, as well as a grease collection pilot that we're proposing to undertake with multifamily to test if by having grease collected in advance from people, we can help to reduce the demand on the sewer system through grease buildup in the system. And it also includes $300,000 to be set aside for future projects. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Just before we go to Councillor Hobbs, this multifamily grease collection pilot, we all know that, or I think we know that grease causes real problems with our infrastructure down below. And so one of our successes has been to try and bring the restaurants to reality, shall we say. How's this one going to work? I mean, are you going to encourage people in multifamily to put their grease in a big bin or something and collect it? Or how does it actually work?
Mr. Chair, what we would do is provide receptacles to the residents selected to participate in the pilot and ask them to put their grease in the container receptacle that we would provide them, and then bring them out to a cart similar to what we have for our organics or our multifamily blue cart recycling. So they would be sealed containers that they would place inside these carts, and then a truck will come along, collect the carts. They will be taken somewhere and be depackaged, and the grease used to generate gas put back in the natural gas system.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Well, once again, I will be supporting this actually, and there are a couple of questions. Just a comment, first of all, the CBIN pilot project in Steveson sounds like a really fascinating one, and it ties into some environmental projects being done elsewhere in the world. But the question is if you could just give a basic description of what that looks like. I know what the ones in the Pacific garbage dump look like, the plastic and everything else. Could you just briefly describe what that looks like, how it would work in a basic way, and how you'd prevent it from being damaged by things like logs floating down the river or perhaps a wayward boater?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, these are bins that go inside the water. They do require an electrical hookup for a pump to help pump the water through, so it is actually suctioning the water through and getting filtered, and then only the large debris is captured inside the bin. And then we have a staff person that would go and collect and empty that, and we would be working with a partner to help audit what's coming through that system. So we do need to be strategic. To your point about logs and that causing damage, we do need to be strategic about where we place it. So we do take that into consideration.
Okay, sure. That'd be interesting to see if there's some partners we could work with down the road too. But and just regarding the grease, which has already been commented on, but do we have any kind of baseline that we're working with multifamily buildings now? And do you know what the participation rate that you'd have to have in, say, a 100-unit building to make the data, the grease you collect and the data that comes from it, meaningful and give you any kind of measurable results? And is the issue with multifamily residents any greater than we have with single-family neighborhoods?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, we are targeting about 500 to 800 units for this pilot, and our sewage and drainage group has been doing some work on setting a baseline for the target area that we are looking at to help see what the difference is before and after. The challenge in multifamily is just there's more concentrated residents in a concentrated area versus single family, but the struggle is generally the same in terms of that. We've done a number of things, such as encourage people to bring waste grease to our recycling depot. We have done a lot of promotion in terms of putting small amounts of grease into the green cart, but the problem is still evident, and that is why we are proposing this pilot initiative.
Okay, just a quick comment and I'll wrap up. Yeah, I mean, that's not a flashy project, I guess, but it is a very important one. And if you look at the numbers in your report, on page 53 about the thousands of dollars and hundreds of incidents. So I do support the project. It's a very good one. And just one last quick comment. So many of the costs are driven by factors that aren't strictly within Richmond's control or council's control. And so I think, I know you guys do this, but I think it's important that we continue to advise the public and help educate the public as to what drives some of these costs. And somebody reminded me earlier today that when my kids were little, probably in the late 80s, early 90s, they'd have a bath and the water would be kind of brown, if you remember that, for those who are around. And, I didn't realize it, but at some point that just stopped happening. And that's probably due to some of the fairly expensive projects that have been undertaken that do cost money. And they were happy. My grandkids don't have brown bath water now, but their parents did. So thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Howe.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm very happy with the multi-family grease collection pilot project. And I just want to ask, now, staff mentioned that there will be $115,000 as the cost. Is it mainly for the containers to be provided? I mean, is there any extra cost for the collection? So, I mean, will the whoever collecting those things for us will charge us more for the collection?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, this program is based on what we would have to pay a contractor to collect the material for us, transport it to the processing facility, and for processing of the product. So it includes a number of factors, and it also includes the purchase of the containers to be able to provide to residents. So it's all included.
Okay, I see. So now in this recommendation, staff mentioned that there's no impact on the fee increase, right? So you don't recommend that we would charge more because of this pilot project. But further down the road, because there's an actual cost involved. So will that be reflected in the future? That we have to increase the rates.
Through the chair to Councillor Al, when we do a pilot, we generally recommend that it be funded from our provision, so we can use this project to test how it would work and what will work and what might not work. And if it does turn into a full-scale project, we do report back to council and recommend the budget and rates at that time.
I see. My final question on this is, now, you are talking about multifamily units. How about if some single house residents, they want to participate in this pilot project? I mean, would that be feasible? I mean, can they voluntarily ask for those containers? And I don't know how this is going to be collected. Is it going to be collected as other, recyclable items every week?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, we are targeting multifamily just because of the concentration of residents and the amount of grease that can end up in the system to test this pilot. Single-family residents have the opportunity to bring, as do multifamily currently, to bring their waste grease to the recycling depot, and we do accept it there. And they can put small amounts into their green card as long as it's absorbed with other materials. But the intent would be, we see how this pilot goes with the multifamily, and then we could look at a broader scale program for the city as well.
But can they ask for the special containers that you're going to provide to the multifamily units?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, that is not in scope of this project. This project is just for multifamily.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, through your worship, to staff. Two areas of question in this part of the report. The first one is on the grease collection. So I do read that it is a one-year pilot, and I'm looking forward to the learning that comes from it. My question is, are we, before we pick which ones are part of the pilot or dealing with the causation for these major blockages, are we able to pinpoint which buildings are putting out grease? Like, can we go to the sewer cover, lift it up, go down, and know that, hey, it's that building, that 20-story building right there, and then do a test and determine amounts of grease coming from them?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, not precisely, but where we do look to highlight are those locations where we have had the backlogs and the backups and the breaks. And those are the areas that we would be targeting for this, is where we've had more problems with the sewer backups.
Okay, thanks. My next question, through your worship to staff, is on the other part, to option 3, the other pilot that was referred to. So on our page 54, SIN 54, it talks about the C-Bins project being $55,000 a year annual cost for the 2 C-Bins. And then later in that paragraph, it mentions that the initiative is a pilot. So is there an end date? And related to that, it does say here that the fees include contractor fees. So is this, if we want to continue this, if these C-Bins last a long time, can we carry that on? And then I have one other follow-up question about this.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we would propose this as a one-year pilot and then report back as to the findings and where we might recommend we expand it or not, depending on how well it worked and the characterization of the waste. You do have to be mindful of where you put these for them to work effectively. and that's part of what we're trying to find from this pilot. But it would form a report back in some form to council.
Thank you. Then to follow up, if I may, with the other parts to that, then I'm curious about. Are these mobile? Can we within a year or after a year move them somewhere else, or does the contractor take them back? Like, will the city own these 2 C-bins, and can we actually make them test multiple places?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, we will own them. And I just want to also highlight that it will be city staff that are servicing these bins, the contractors providing the bins and supporting us with auditing the materials in the bins.
Great. Then, I definitely support this option and hope that what we learn in this year, we can ensure in future years we try the north arm to capture the amount of garbage and small plastic debris I see in the north arm. So thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any other arms. So whether it's Suzanne or Jason or John Irving, is there anything to add to all that?
Mr. Chair, nothing further to add.
Okay, so let's ask for a motion on the recommendation. Okay, so that's recommendations are moved and seconded. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the recommendation that's on the floor, and I want to thank staff for the work they've put into all this. There was an article in the paper, the Vancouver Sun today, about Metro Vancouver. It says households will pay 3.5% more in fees to Metro Vancouver. So it says the average annual fee will be $595. So if you look at our bin 65, for a single-family dwelling, $1,644, almost a third of that is going to Metro Vancouver. So I think it's really important that we build on the success that we've had, like water conservation, and look at innovative ideas like the C-bins, like the multifamily grease pilot, that will not only be better for the environment, but also help combat the increases that we know that are coming from Metro Vancouver. Because the article, and all of us who are at councils know that Metro Vancouver did yeoman's work this year in trying to bring it down and save some of the costs, but we do know they are coming in the next couple of years. So I thank staff for the ideas they brought forward, and I think I would agree with what Councillor Hobbs said. We need to be really communicating with the community that we're doing our share of what we can do and promote the success, like with the water conservation, and look forward to hearing back, if approved, on the pilot project. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Before my comment, just a question, Your Worship. Can these be voted on individually, or will it all be one?
Unless you're proposing an amendment, we're just going to vote on it all together.
Okay, then thank you. I would like to propose an amendment to change the drainage and diking from option 2 to be option 3.
Okay, and what page is that on?
47.
All right, is there a seconder for that? There is no seconder. Carry on.
Okay, then we'll as a result, then this will be voted all together.
Yes,
correct?
That's right.
Okay, then my thank you. My only comment then is that I will vote against the motion because I think it was previously recommended by staff. It's now not in this report, but they're just going on what we directed them to do as I asked staff earlier. So I really feel since the staff even looked at the reasons to have that previous recommendation in April, the amount of weather extremes we've had, the amount of uncertainty that's coming to the forefront in our region, and it just seems not the direction we should be going. Albeit to make the change now, I think we'd also probably want to look into transfer funding and other things. So that is the reason I'm voting against the whole item. Thanks.
Councillor Steves.
Yeah, just a quick comment on the Metro Vancouver aspect of it. Some of these items we've been discussing in the Climate Change Committee quite extensively. Richmond has been showing the way to some extent with our metering and a few other things like that. Some of the metro costs will come down when Burnaby and some of the others come to their senses. Now, we don't have to pay for their lack of metering, but what happens is that Metro Vancouver costs will go up eventually because we'll need more water because they aren't metering. And basically, there's been a major discussion. There's one aspect, a number of other items as well, that some communities aren't doing their share to bring the Metro Vancouver costs down. So we're helping, and we just have to keep pushing ahead and pointing those things out. The other thing we have to be aware of, for those of you that aren't aware, the mayor, of course, is, because we're both on the Metro board, there's always a push that they would like to make us help pay the cost of the Annacis Island plant. And the agreement we have, of course, is our plant is separate, and it was all built separately, and it costs a lot less, and we benefit from that. While we have some major costs in terms of building the lines across Richmond, we certainly don't have the cost they're having in North Vancouver and at Iona Island for the manufacturing of a new plant. So as long as we're able to keep those costs down, we're in a lot better position than the rest of Metro Vancouver.
That is for sure. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. May I ask that we vote on these separately, given that there's some opposition to part of this?
No. Well, this is the budget. We've proposed amendments as people have seen it, and it'll be one vote. All right, so I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. Someone move adjournment. Okay. We